I'm Joe Bianca.
I'm Bill Finley.
I'm Jonathan Green.
I'm Alan Carasso.
Good morning. It is 9:01 Wednesday, August 26th. This is the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News.
Hi, I'm Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News and a big fan of the 10 and 20, yes, 10 and 20 Boston Red Sox.
Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable, and I came to the conclusion after this weekend's races that if there's a movie made about my life, it's not going to be Paul Rudd or John Oliver. It's going to be starring Paco Lopez due to all his great acting ability.
I'm Alan Carasso, managing editor of the TDN. It's good to be with you for episode 51.
I think Al's a little salty that he didn't make it to the cut for episode 50. You'll make it for episode 100.
Make the cut.
Who said Paul Rudd, John? Who told you that?
Believe me, it's in my mind. I look like Paul Rudd. Yeah, like a little shorter, tubbier Paul Rudd.
The TDN Writers Room is presented by Keeneland. Remember that the Keeneland September yearling sale, if I had a watch and if I had a calendar on it, I would know that starts September 13th, same day as the first Sunday of the football season. So football, Keeneland, a lot to look forward to on that day. Keeneland September runs September 13th through the 25th. 4,272 yearlings on offer, and that will lead right into the Keeneland Fall Meet, which of course culminates with the Breeders' Cup World Championships. Big weekend of racing, but the main story was Maximum Security. He was back on the big stage in the Pacific Classic. The San Diego Handicap was an okay race, but this was, I don't know that this was more of a test because there was a lot of similar horses. It was a short field, but it was a grade one. It was a mile and a quarter. So that was his first time at a mile and a quarter since the Derby, first grade one since the Saudi Cup. He ran well. He kind of blew them away in the stretch. Seemed like he was getting worked on a lot on the far turn, but I think that's just kind of the horse he is. Same thing happened in the Saudi Cup, and I don't know. He needs jockey pressure, I think, to run his best. He ran well, but he got a 107 buyer, which is much better than the 102 he got in the San Diego. But it just, I don't know. I've said this before, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way when horses get their own way completely on the lead. The pace was pretty soft, and I didn't understand the ride on Midcourt. Midcourt has done his best running when he's sent to the lead, including in the San Diego. Was ridden much more conservatively in that race, kind of handed the race, I thought, to Maximum Security. But he did his job. He won off by several lengths. Probably is right up at the top of the handicap division, along with Improbable. Now that they're both trained by Bob Baffert, it'll be interesting to see where they each go next. The Awesome Again is the next big grade one in California, but my guess is they won't both show up there. Maybe he'll ship one to the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I know Bill was really impressed by Maximum Security. He wrote about it in his week in review, so I'll open it up to you guys.
Yeah, I'm more enthusiastic about this than apparently you are, Joe. And because it was such a contrast to me over the San Diego. So now let's go back and do some revisionist history. Going into the San Diego, yes, there are questions about would this horse run as well for Bob Baffert as he did for Jason Service, the Jason Service who has been indicted for allegedly doping his horses. But that was a legitimate question. As a matter of fact, that's the question that comes up every time one of these Service or Navarro horses run. The San Diego Handicap didn't answer those questions. And if anything, it kind of answered them in the negative, where he only won by a nose. I know the trip was kind of funky. It was his first start after a 5-month layoff, et cetera. But he didn't look like the Maximum Security that we saw under Service in all these races, the Florida Derby, the Saudi Cup, even crossing the wire first in the Kentucky Derby. Was he outrageously good in the Pacific Classic? Probably not, but he was definitely better. He was definitely the dominant horse. He left no doubts that day that he was on the racetrack, the best horse of that bunch. And I think it's fair to say, let's go back to the back-o-meter, John. On the back-o-meter, I think he's back. I really do. And I also think that he's got a license to get even better. We're going to have to deal with Maximum Security in the Breeders' Cup Classic, maybe in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, maybe in the Awesome Again. I don't know if he's going to win those races or not, but I think there were a lot of doubts coming into the Pacific Classic, and I think he dispelled those doubts.
Yeah, well, I think Maximum Security is the horse that everyone loves to hate. It's a horse that has modest, has modest beginnings. From maiden 16, we all know the story. Won through the ranks. Won the Derby, hit the Derby line first, and then got DQ'd. Then the testing came out, and I think me included, everyone's kind of piling on this horse because of all of those factors. And now, since he's come back, the first race, San Diego, you say, all right, knocking off the rust, didn't look that impressive, but still won. This race had to get worked on, almost throughout the race to win. But again, started to pull away and won by 3 lengths. You can question whether or not, he had everything his own way. I would say yes, but he's winning. I mean, he's winning races, and he's doing it the way that you would expect a horse to come off a big layoff. Almost irrespective of who the connections were. Now, when you add in the fact that the horse has gone through this scandal, and that people are questioning again right now whether or not he's back to the form that he was, or if he should have even been at that form earlier, you can certainly make those cases. But all he's been doing right now is checking the boxes and winning the races that they're putting him in, and each race going forward is going to be more and more difficult. And that's really where we're going to see whether or not Maximum Security is, a legitimate handicap horse, or if his best days are behind him.
I think the Maximum Security we saw the other day was just better physically looking. I thought maybe in the San Diego he looked a little dull. It looked like a horse that was going to need a run. And it looked like his coat was much better the other day. He looked a stronger type. And so it was Sharp Samurai who was pressing him, and Sharp Samurai is mostly a turf horse, but gosh, he ran out of his skin, that horse. And even though the pace wasn't hot per se, Maximum Security took whatever heat there was, and he threw in a final quarter mile less than 25 seconds. So I think by any metric, that's doing some real running. So I think he's back. I still have him rated a notch below Tom's Daytop in the grand scheme. But I think that they'll both run in the Awesome again. There's no real reason to ship, particularly since the Gold Cup is only 250,000 this year. So I think he's definitely back, Bill.
I think one thing you have to say for him is that he does win. He does win. He's only crossed the wire worse than first once in his entire career. So I think you got to give him credit for that. At least he shows up. For him to go out and do that on Saturday, like I said, I thought he had everything his own way. He's supposed to win that race like that, but at the end of the day, it was a good performance, and I think he's pretty much back. I think that was probably second or third best race of his career. Another horse that wins a lot that I wanted to mention from the weekend is Rushing Fall, and I thought that Diana was one of the best races of the year, honestly, with that stretch battle. I was not a huge fan of Mean Mary going into the race. I thought her win in the New York was a little phony, where she was just handed the race. But she ran. She ran on Sunday, and so did Rushing Fall. Thought that was a terrific stretch battle. And, Rushing Fall is really one of those horses. I hate the cliche that, a horse knows where the wire is. She seems like one of those horses because she never wins by huge margins, but she just always finds a way to get it done. And that was not easy to do because that was a soft pace. They went 23-3, which is pretty much going down a straightaway in the Saratoga 1 1/8 races. You're going down a straightaway. You're not going around a turn. And then 48 for the half. Like, they finished in 1:45-4. So they were really, really running. And those last 5 furlongs, and especially the last 3 furlongs, came home in a tick under 34 seconds. That was running. So I want to tip my cap to both of those mares. They both, I think, have a bright. I mean, Mean Mary has a bright future. Rushing Fall has already established herself as a great turf mare. She's got 6 Grade 1 wins now. And I thought the ride by Javier Castellano was pretty good, too. I think, a lot of times some of these jockeys, when they let these other horses go, which he did initially, they wait too long to confront the horse, which I think only gives the horse on the lead more and more confidence and makes them harder to reel in. He went after her at the 3/8 pole, and he asked Rushing Fall, I thought, earlier than most other jockeys on that circuit would have. And they hooked up at the top of the stretch, and they really threw down for a terrific battle. And I thought that was one of the races of the year, honestly. Also wanted to mention Halladay. in the Fourstardave. He was a horse who was a beaten favorite in the Bernard Baruch, and kind of was, I thought, wrangled off the pace that day for no reason. And they put him back on the lead in the Fourstardave, and he goes wire to wire. However, I thought the story of the race was Chad. And Chad had pretty much half the field, including Uni, and none of them ran. None of them were in the top four, which, when's the last time you saw a grade one race where Chad had 3 or 4 horses and none of them even cracked the superfecta? So I thought that was the story in there. Any other performances from the weekend from you guys, or any comments on the races I mentioned?
Well, I just want to say, let's stay on the subject of Chad Brown, and you're right. It is so remarkable to see him have a bad outing in a graded stakes race on the grass as he did in the Fourstardave. But then, what does he do the next day? He comes back and wins the Diana, 5th straight time. And, sometimes we take this guy for granted. It's funny, I'm segueing off what you said was a rare bad day for him. But sometimes, we lose track of just how dominant and how good this guy is. To win a grade 1 stakes race 5 straight years in a row is just like so remarkable. And, is he going to win 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row? Probably not, but he could. Every single year, for the next many years to come, he's going to come into races like this just loaded. And, Rushing Fall now has stepped up where you said, like, Uni has not come back and done that well. Sister Charlie has not come back and done that well. But still, Brown has newspaper of record and Rushing Fall. So, even when he has a couple horses not really performed to expectations this year, he's still loaded in this division. I just don't think you can, I just can't say enough things about a guy winning 5 straight grade 1 races. Has that happened in New York since Woody Stevens in the Belmont? If someone else knows the answer, please let me know.
Yeah, he's been dominating that race, and he's been, his owners have been focusing on those types of horses, the older fillies, the turf fillies that can go around a ground, usually from Europe. And he's been able to identify them and bring them over here and campaign them here, which also isn't an easy thing to do. So the fact that he's won it, that particular grade 1 5 times in a row is phenomenal. And then, we kind of gloss over the fact that he's won over 100 grade 1s. Just think about that. He's won over 100 grade 1s, and he's maybe now entering the prime of his career. I don't want this to be a Chad Brown infomercial, but, tip of the hat to him. He's just, dominating at the highest level in one of the top circuits. One of the races that I want to talk about, and Joe, you alluded to Halladay, was, just the fact that Halladay actually beat a really deep field. You look at the horses in that race, and from top to bottom, literally, there were top horses that were in that race. And I know we rail all the time about, oh, this is a grade 1. Is it really a grade 1? Because there's 4 horses in it and one's a claiming horse. This was a legitimate race, the Fourstardave. And I was pleased to see that they continue to campaign God Stormy, and that she continues to do well. Is she at the top of her game right now? No, she's not. But is she running against the boys? Yeah, that's tough to do. Is she running again, in grade 1 races? Absolutely. And she's knocking on the door. She continues to hit the board, second, fourth at these top races. And when it's very easy for an owner to say, I'm going to go ahead and retire this filly and breed her to a top stallion and just make her into a cash cow on the breeding side, the fact that they continue to campaign her and at the highest level, I think is a really wonderful thing. But I was very impressed with the Fourstardave, just top to bottom, as far as a field and as far as the way that the race went out. The boo birds, or whatever you want to call it, as far as things that really disappointed me for the weekend, was the Iselin, the Philip H. Iselin, the grade 3 at Monmouth Park. And normally you'd say, why are you talking about a grade 3 when we're discussing all these grade 1 races? Well, there was such an acting job that went on between Paco Lopez and Vargas, whose horse Pirates Punch hit the wire in front. And I think that, just the stewards, just absolutely, bumbled their way through. And because Paco was so exaggerated in his acting, as far as, the horse crossed over in front of him, they almost felt compelled to, give the win to his horse, Warrior's Charge. So it was a little disappointing, again, because it's my home track, that you see things like that. And, you read on Twitter all the different thoughts on the rule and stuff like that. It really shouldn't be that much of a subjective situation. It should be, did the horse impede the other horse? If not, then keep everything the way it is. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. I will say that I'm pleased that Monmouth actually did pay all of the purse monies that they hadn't paid previously. So thanks to management there for going ahead and actually making those payments. So that way, when you do hit the wire first and you do test negative, you do get paid. So, Monmouth has kind of a mixed group, of grades this weekend. But I was, just surprised at the Monmouth Park stewards for taking down the winner's Pirates Punch. And I'm sure that now I'm going to be on the target as soon as we run a horse there that has a little bit of an inquiry that will be taken down because of these comments. Back to you, Al.
I'm going to leave Paco for now. Maybe we'll come back to it, and if not, that's fine too. But I was so double-fisted against Rushing Fall just because the 9 furlongs didn't seem to suit. And I'm with you, Joe. I thought Javier gave her the right ride, just stalking Mean Mary and going after her at the right time, and then they outsprinted. I want to give a few kudos to Sister Charlie. Definitely ran better than she did in Boston Spa. And if she ever gets a setup, and maybe the 9 furlongs is a little bit short for her, but if she gets a setup back out to 10 furlongs or a mile and 3/16 in a race like the Breeders' Cup, she could make some noise still. I don't think the tank is completely empty there. And then just something that John said about Got Stormy and campaigning her into a 6-year-old season. Look at these Chad horses: Rushing Fall, age 5. Uni, age 6, Sister Charlie, age 6. So it's nice to see that these mares, which are not always easy to keep sound and or happy mentally that deep into their career. I think it's really great for racing to see horses of that quality at this level, this deep into their careers.
Yeah, and Al, just if I can jump in, we actually call it filly fever. When you give a filly time off, because of an injury or just because you want her to develop, and you bring her back, usually, for her 4th and 5th year, sometimes the biological clock takes over and they don't want to race as much. They want to be moms. And I understand that, I get it. But the fact
that be a mom too at this point, John?
I do want to be a mom. I would love to retire and be a mom. I'm tired of running. Yes. Tired of being on this treadmill. So sometimes filly fever does take over. So the fact that these trainers have been able to, keep the fillies and mares focused on racing and at the highest level is really a tremendous feat.
Yeah. And, Chad Brown gave credit to Bob Edwards of E5 after the race because she didn't run well. It was like her only dud of her career when she was 4th in the First Lady last year. It's worth a lot of money at auction. So he gave credit to Bob Edwards for bringing her back as a 5-year-old. And, she clearly is still at the top of her game, if not better than she was before. Like I said, I wasn't always a huge fan of her because she always seemed to get a good setup, but she makes her own trip with her tactical speed. And, she really she knows how to win. Want to also tip the cap to Got Stormy. I thought she had run a couple of really bad races for her standard so far this year, but this was clearly the best effort she's had since the matriarch. I agree that Sister Charlie ran better than she did in the Boston Spa. She really had no chance to win with the way the pace set up. But I don't know, she still was racing on her left lead in the stretch. I don't know. I got to see it. I got to see that she's still the same horse as she was last year. A couple other horses I wanted to mention. There were some good 2-year-old performances last week in the stakes at Saratoga. We had Golden Pal, who won the Skidmore with a 92 buyer on Friday. He's the son of Lady Shipman, first fall out of Lady Shipman. He's my Uncle Mo. He's obviously got a big future on the grass. And my girl Tobys Hart, who ran in the Bolton Landing on Wednesday, she's still a little bit green, and she only got a 79 buyer, won by like a length and a quarter or so. Ran down a Steve Asmussen horse that ran really well on the lead, but she's really talented. I think she's, like I said, still a little green. She did have a wide trip, broke a step slowly. But I'd be interested to see them try her on the dirt because she works bullet works on the dirt at Churchill. The spin away is probably too quick a turnaround for them if they were going to try something like that. But I think that's something I'd like to see in the future. And one other horse I wanted to mention who ran really big race upon return on Sunday, it was Mo Forza, ran in the Del Mar Mile, and he was a horse who got good at the end of last year. He won the Twilight Derby and then the Hollywood Derby. And then was off for 6 months or so, 6.5 months after not running that well in the Pegasus turf with a wide trip. came back on Sunday, got burst through a seam at the inside and won off really powerfully, got a 101 buyer. So he's an interesting horse in the turf miler division, I think, going forward, and could make some noise at a price in the Breeders' Cup Mile. So it's a lot of good performances this week. And anybody else?
Yeah, just a couple rising star performances. Princess Noor at Del Mar was hugely impressive. $1,350,000 2-year-old at OBS. Got a 76 buyer, I think, and she was never asked to run. She'll be very tough going forward. And Lady Spite Spear at Woodbine on the turf was very impressive. And TDN Rising Star Alda went up to Woodbine and won the Catch a Glimpse Stakes somehow. I can't believe she got that photo, but daughter of Munnings there as well. So just those 2-year-old performances were encouraging as well.
And friend of the show, Blue Buff, won his 6th in a row.
I was going to say, wasn't he supposed to go in the Iselin?
We decided the Iselin was coming up too tough. So we decided to shift gears, and he ran an allowance race at Delaware and won. And now he'll be pointed for a stake race at Delaware on Governor's Day.
You just couldn't get Paco, so that was
we couldn't get yeah, exactly, or any other actor for that matter to play Paco on it. But 6 in a row. In our illustrious career of racing, we've only had one other horse who won more than 6 in a row, and it was like bottom level claiming. So he's the gift that keeps on giving. After 2.5-year layoff, he's been a lot of fun.
We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland. Owning multiple graded stakes winning racehorses like Hard Not to Love and Decorated Invader is attainable with a partnership like West Point Thoroughbreds. Partnerships enable you to spread your action across several horses for less than it costs to own one horse alone. This increases your racetrack action and chances for a big horse. Learn more about why West Point Thoroughbreds is the gold standard in racing partnerships at westpointtb.com. So Winning Impression is going to be in the Kentucky Derby starting gate for West Point. It's their 5th Kentucky Derby runner overall and the 4th since 2014. They finished 2nd with Command and Curve, another big long shot for Dallas Stewart. And they got the job done, of course, in 2017 with Always Dreaming. So the dream is very much still alive for the West Point Thoroughbreds partners, and best of luck to them in the Derby. We look forward to seeing them there. So there was some reporting last week about Wayne Potts, who is a trainer in Maryland. We're going to talk to the president of the Maryland Jockey Club, Sal Sinatra, in a little bit. I was reporting in the Pollock Report, so good job by Ray Pollock and Natalie Boss. Wayne Potts is he's being ruled off the grounds in Maryland because he is paper training, supposedly, allegedly, for Marcus Vitale, who's a guy who's been banned pretty much everywhere he's gone. And supposedly his horses are training at a place called Rising Sun Training Center and are then shipping and running in Wayne Potts' name. It's an interesting story. There's a lot of, kind of seemingly crooked stuff going on here. There also was something in the story about Jorge Navarro. One of the stipulations of Jorge Navarro's indictment was that he couldn't be involved with horses, but moved back down to Ocala. And now his horses are showing up in his father-in-law's name for an outfit called Tomahawk Racing. And they went through the horses that have left Navarro's barn and who they're running for now. And you can draw pretty clear connections between him and who they're racing for now. And it's just it's a depressing story, not a surprising story. Like I said, we're going to talk to Sal Sinatra about it, get a little bit more detail. It looked bad, especially because Wayne Potts, after this story broke, won the opener on Friday at Saratoga. I can't give Naira too much heat for that because the story had just come out. It hasn't been adjudicated yet. There's still allegations, but I think going forward they're probably not going to want to take his entries, especially as more about this comes out. But it's just it never ceases to amaze me how many lengths people will go to allegedly cheat. And there's so many hoops that they have to jump through just to keep allegedly, cheating with these horses. And it's funny, but it's sad at the same time. And it's hard because, we've spoken about this before, about the lack of centralization, the lack of, central regulatory body that can control and police these things. But it's another thing that racing needs to get a handle on. And I want to credit Sal Sinatra and the MJC for being proactive on this front. We'll see what happens. There's some good quotes in the story about from Bill Badgett as well, at Gulfstream about Navarro and how they're trying to keep his horses from resurfacing and running, basically still with his training. There have been rumors that he's been seen at Gulfstream West, and Bill Badgett, fiercely denied those rumors. So I'll take him at his word for that. But, just these are, Navarro especially is a guy that racing needs to stay 100 million miles away from by any means necessary. If you even get a whiff of him being involved with horses, I think you need to ban or at least suspend everybody involved. But it's one of those things where you get a million chances in racing, and even after you're supposedly kicked out, there are ways that you can finagle your way back into the sport, no matter how dirty you are, no matter how much scummy crap you did, how much cheating you allegedly did. And, it takes people like Sal Sinatra and the Jockey Club and, regulators who actually want to do the job and aren't just buddies with all the trainers and the owners. And, it's not easy. It's not easy to, keep these guys off the grounds, apparently. That was my main takeaway, is just how much trouble these guys will go to still allegedly cheat with horses. Bill, toss it to you.
Well, I actually want to put sort of a positive spin on this, because you look at what is being the allegations against Potts / Vitale, and some of the it almost looked like they were the Keystone Cops, who using whiteout to race one guy's name and put in another. I mean, come on, nobody's used whiteout in 20 years. So, anyways, but I think there was probably a point in time in racing that people just might have looked the other way. And there was, on the part of racetracks, it was always easier to just not do anything, because, you don't want to get involved in lawsuits, and the mainstream media doesn't really cover racing. So nobody's going to come down on us and make a big story about this. And the people in Maryland did the exact opposite. I mean, they got right out and said, get out of here, take your horses away. We want to have no part of this. And some of the quotes, I'm sure we'll get Saul to say some of the things. I mean, the quotes were so strong too. No wishy-washiness about this at all. So, maybe it's a reach to say there's some good that come out of this, but I think in some respects there are, that we're seeing some new attitudes, not among everybody in racing, but some people in racing, just say, we're not going to take this anymore. We're going to do the right thing. Now, since then, he has started, I'm not sure, at all the tracks he's raced at. He's raced in New York and in New Jersey. New Jersey, they just don't even talk about it. They won't tell you anything. New York put out that statement. I do think it's incumbent on both of them to do some investigation here, because, maybe it's okay that they let him run those horses right after the stories came out and they hadn't had time to really digest things. But if this, in fact, is what's been going on, that he's been a front for Vitale, then this guy needs to go as well.
Yeah, Bill, I think it is a very positive thing for racing, where, a year ago, 6 months ago, we were sitting here and basically throwing our hands up in the air and saying, who's even policing this? Is anybody even, at the switch watching what's going over, or is all just kind of like a wink and a nod and go ahead and just don't tell anybody? So I'm very happy that Sal Sinatra and the Maryland Jockey Club not only made a statement, but made an extremely immediate and, and just swift and hard statement about, just get out of here. We don't want your kind here on our racetrack, which was great. And I think that the pendulum is shifting. I think that people are seeing that these athletes need to have a voice and need to have a say in what's going on, about how we're treating them, and also just rooting the industry out from people who are known cheaters and just not accepting that anymore. So again, we're going to be talking to Sal Sinatra, and I know he's going to be, very open about talking to us about the situation and also what the process was. And I'm really looking forward to that, because one of the things that we ask all the trainers that come on this show is, how can we catch cheat? How can we get rid of them? Well, being swift and defined as far as what the action is, you cheat, you're gone. End of story. You're not going to race here anymore. And if enough of the racetracks do that, then where are these guys going to go? They're not going to have a chance to make any money anywhere else. So I was pleased to see that. And I think we're going to talk a little bit later on about claiming also, and the fact that a horse got a claim that was voided. And I also think that's a very positive thing that's going on in racing now, is that these racetracks are starting to say a claim isn't completed until after the horse gets out of the test barn and is reviewed by a vet. And then if there's a question on the soundness of that horse, the people who are claiming the horse have the opportunity to void it. They don't have to void it, but they have the opportunity to void it. Again, I think that's a very positive thing, because it means that horses that are iffy and may not be able to get around over one more time, that it gives people an opportunity to not only void claims, but also make other owners say, you know what, maybe I don't want to put this horse, in a race because I'm going to end up with him back anyway. So let me do the right thing and retire it or repurpose it.
By the way, there's no truth to the rumor that when Sal Sinatra talked to Wayne Potts, that Twisted Sister was playing in the background. We're not going to take it anymore. No truth to that rumor.
That is good reporting, Al.
Yes. You can't get this anywhere else, John.
You can't get that on
There's a line in a country music song that goes, "All the Ajax in the world's not going to clean your dirty laundry." And here's my question about Wayne Potts. I don't know anything about Wayne Potts. Probably really didn't know Wayne Potts' name until he got put up in the Troy Stakes a few weeks ago. And there he was on the shank and all happy and okay. But everybody knows Marcus Vitale. Everybody knows his rap sheet. Like, from a moral perspective, if you're Wayne Potts, how can you do any business with Marcus Vitale? You know that he trained horses for this or that owner, and you're going to accept those. And I mean, you can't be this dumb. You know who had the horses. Why would you even take those horses in the first place? But yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm glad to see it being policed. Maybe Sal Sinatra is the Jeff Garral of thoroughbred racing. You know,
we'll see. That would be a long way to go.
We'll find out. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys that I think that the tide is slowly shifting towards, being more of a hard ass on guys like this. But I don't think it's ubiquitous enough. I think, there are so many jurisdictions and so many tracks where it's still slap on the wrist, look the other way. But yeah, I think slowly but surely we're starting to get to have some people in power who really want to do something about cleaning up the game. And this is one of those things. These things have been going on for a long time, and we didn't get reporting on it. We didn't get action against it. But this paper training thing has been going on for a long time for suspended trainers, and it makes it so that nothing ever meaningfully changes, and nobody ever meaningfully gets punished, no matter what they do to horses. So yeah, I mean, it's good that we're at least learning about this now, and there are at least some kind of consequences. There needs to be more done, like I said, especially with the Navarro thing. I think that's something that could really, crop up and bite racing in the ass again if he's able to finesse his way back into the sport, because he's a guy that should be banned for life. So we'll see what happens with that. But there's a lot of bad guys. There's a lot of bad guys in racing, and it's the reality of the sport. And you're never going to catch everybody. You're never going to weed out all the bad guys, but we got to get a higher percentage than we've gotten. And hat tip to everybody who's involved with exposing and getting rid of the ones that we are getting rid of. So it's a start for sure. So this broke over the weekend. Bill Finley had a story on it that there will be no fans at the Derby, and I think we're all going to be in agreement that this was the right decision. It was the decision that was made very late, with only a couple weeks left until the Derby. It's a week from Saturday, but it was the right call, because this would have been the biggest gathering of fans of any sort in America since COVID first hit. And I said time and again earlier in the podcast, I don't want to be the first one into the wilderness with those kind of numbers at my event. And God forbid it's it's attached to a spike in coronavirus cases. Like that's a PR hit that I don't think you're going to recover from for a long time, not to mention the human toll of it. So I think it was the right call. So hat tip to Churchill Downs and the people who made the decision, albeit a late one. It's going to be interesting to see in October what it looks like, if there's any chance for the Preakness to have fans. And then, of course, that after that is the Breeders' Cup. And we don't want to speculate or project too far in advance, but very happy that Churchill Downs made the right call. Didn't want our sport as many negative, PR hits as it's taken over the past couple of years to add, hey, look, we're going to be in Defiance and have 25,000 people at our event. It was never a good idea. And they came to that conclusion eventually. So we're happy about that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you could fault Churchill Downs for being late with this decision, that when they talked only 9 days earlier about having a crowd of approximately 23,000 people, I think everybody at the time said, wait a minute, this is just not a good idea. But in the long run, that they came up with the no fans, and that's going to be the status. That's all that really matters. Will there be fans at the Preakness and the Breeders' Cup? My guess would be probably not. But we'll have to see how that all unfolds. I think that everybody was waiting to get through the Derby first before they made any decisions about that. But so far as this year's Kentucky Derby and fans and all that, I don't think we've heard the end of the story, because one thing that's been a little bit underreported, or that people aren't talking a lot about, what about the Breonna Taylor situation in Louisville? And I was Googling around to see if there's any particular planned protests for Derby Day. I couldn't find anything, but I mean, things are, from what we read, are really not good there. And I would think that the people of Black Lives Matter and all the groups that are involved in the protests against the shooting of Breonna Taylor would not miss the opportunity to target the Kentucky Derby. What could they do? Maybe just protest and block off a few streets. Maybe it doesn't get any worse than that. But I think that's another thing that we have to keep our eyes on. I'm not suggesting by any means that they don't run the Kentucky Derby, but there's a chance that there's going to be still a lot of problems with this issue as well. So as all of society is dealing with two very huge problems at once: the pandemic and the problems with all the racial strife in the country. So stay tuned for that as well.
I think that's a good point as well about the unrest in Louisville, and all this could have been avoided if they just arrested the cops who murdered that woman. But that aside, I think that's, if we had fans and then the protests on top of that, I think that might have been a little bit of a mess. So I think in this way it will have less of an effect on the Derby with there not being 25,000 people trying to get through the gates, because I think you're right that protesters will try to disrupt the Derby, because this is the biggest spotlight on Louisville throughout the entire year, and one thing a protest needs is someone paying attention. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, but I think it would be potentially a worse situation if we had fans. So good all around that we're not going to have fans at the Derby. This was a pretty big story this week from Bill Finley's reporting, that Carl Broberg, who is nationally usually number one or number two in wins, it's usually him and Steve Asmussen back and forth, is being denied stalls at Remington. He's still allowed to run there. We just can't stable his horses there. He's kind of an outspoken jerk, I would say. And he kind of rubs people the wrong way, and he claims a lot of horses off of people. And he's not one of the more popular figures in racing. But I just don't know why. I don't know what the justification is for ruling for not giving him stalls. And it seemed like, Bill, that you didn't get an answer from Remington either.
No, they're not going to give you an answer. And whenever tracks do this, they usually just hush up and don't say anything. It's easier that way to avoid lawsuits. But what did you call him? What kind of jerk? Outspoken jerk? So this is America. You're allowed to be an outspoken jerk. This is an
outspoken jerk myself.
Yeah.
Right.
This is one of the great things about being an American, that you're allowed to be an outspoken jerk. And so Remington won't say what's going on, but it's pretty obvious what is going on. This guy's got a Twitter obsession, and he goes on there and just rants and raves about things. And more so about Lone Star Park, which is owned by the same company that owns Remington. He's ripped the proverbial new one on Twitter about various things. And it looks like this is just retribution and payback. And if that's the case, and I believe it is something like that, It doesn't appear to have anything to do with drugs or doping horses or anything like that. That's not right. I mean, the guy's got a right to be an outspoken jerk and speak his mind and everything. It's probably not in his best interest, and maybe he ought to learn his lesson and just calm down a little bit. But if that's why they deprived him of stalls, then I think that was just kind of silly and childish. And it will also be counterproductive. I mean, the guy runs 5 horses on every single card, so you can have smaller fields without him. He's left a few horses in Oklahoma at a training center, but he's taking most of the horses that would have run in Oklahoma to Chicago to run at Hawthorne. So, yeah, I mean, again, if that's the case, and unless there's something here that we don't know, and I don't think there is, Remington, not a good job.
But it is also within their rights to decide who they want to give stalls to. So Bill, I understand. I'm a big believer in being able to say what you want, and the Constitution gives us that ability to stump and talk, and really, as long as we're not being a danger to the general population, to say what we want, which he is fully exercising that opportunity, as you said on social media. Is it not the best light to do something like this? Yeah, I mean, if I was Remington Park, you would like to be able to sit down with them, or the owners of Remington and Lone Star, and sit down with them and say, "Hey, Carl, let's figure this out, because this isn't making either one of us look good." And ultimately, we have the hammer. We have the hammer of being able to say whether or not we're going to not only accept your stall application, but accept your entries. So if you want to race in this jurisdiction, then it's not play by our rules, but let's kind of figure this out and put a moratorium, or be a little more cautious, or handle things with a little bit more kid gloves. I think this stems back to years and years and years of him failing, drug tests with horses, and then being outspoken about it, about feeling like he wasn't fairly given due process and things like that.
And I also disagree with what you said. I mean, sure, Remington, but could just say, "Oh, we don't like you, we're not going to give you stalls." But they could say, "John, we don't like your glasses, and so therefore we're not going to let you run your Blue Buff at Remington the next time you want to run them there." Or, "We don't like the fact that you look like John Oliver, and we don't like John Oliver, so therefore we're not going to let you run." I mean, put on your big boy pants here and just be so offended by the guy.
Let me counter. Let me explain something to you, okay? Because as an owner of racehorses, you have to understand the rules of the game that some of these racetrack owners are putting out there. For example, if you want to have stalls during the championship meet at Gulfstream, they don't say to you, "You have to leave horses here year round to support our summer meet." But when you put in for stalls, you have horses that have run there over the summertime, you are given preferential treatment for doing that. So it's not just a matter of, hey, put on your big boy pants and say, well, the big tracks shouldn't be doing this to this guy. They can do whatever the hell they want. And just like you said, if they don't like my glasses, they don't have to give me stalls. Now, I would like to think that I run enough horses and enough good horses where they would still give us stalls, but it's definitely part of the calculus that goes on with it. So if Carl wants to put in his lexicon that he, can shout to the roof and off the rooftops about, how he doesn't agree with what Lone Star or Remington does, that is his right and his prerogative. But there are going to be retributions that he has to understand that could possibly come down the line. Now, look, if he wants to race anywhere else in the world, he probably could. But the guy does have a history. He does have a checkered past, which he actually quoted. You quoted him in a 2015 article that he has a checkered past and that he recognizes that, and that he understands that he made some big mistakes when he first started training. Now, is he cleaner now? I guess. But he's still doing things that upset management. And if you do things that upset management, management has the right to say, "We're not going to let you race here." That is certainly within their rights also.
Now, I understand that, but what I'm trying to say is what he may or may not have done in 2015 or 2017 apparently doesn't seem to have anything to do with his current situation. He was banned for being a loudmouth. I don't think that's justification for banning somebody. It just being, as Joe said, some sort of jerk. I just, again, of course they can do it. They can do anything they want. And matter of fact, most racetracks don't exercise their rights to exclude people nearly as much as they should. But let's ban the real people that are causing real problems right now. Guy going on Twitter and saying Lone Star is poorly run. Come on. I mean, that's you got.
I agree with that definitely the racetracks need to do a better job of extracting the people that are doing things against the rules currently. I 1,000% agree with that. But I think we both also have coming to a common ground where we understand that management has the right to do that. Is it always the right thing to do? No, but I think it's a good thing that they're actually starting to recognize that if they don't want to have certain people on, stalled there, stabled there, or racing there, that they have the right to do it as long as it's not, due to somebody's race, religion, sexual orientation, creed, whatever, all those things.
I just want to say, when I first read the headline, I assumed it was because he failed drug tests or something like that, because he's had failed drug tests in the past and he doesn't have a reputation as a particularly clean trainer. I don't know him, one way or another. I couldn't say, but he doesn't have that reputation as a clean guy. So I assumed, his horses failed a bunch of drug tests. That's why he wasn't allowed stalls. And then I read that it was about him being a loudmouth on Twitter. It's like, well, if being a loudmouth on Twitter disqualified you, we would have gotten rid of the president a while ago. But that doesn't seem to matter anymore.
He's not racing at Remington or Lone Star either. The president.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably got too many bankruptcies to open a stable at this point. But yeah, I mean, that's surprising to me that was the reason. But hey, like you said, tracks can do whatever they want. He still has plenty of places to run, so it's not like he can only run there. But I thought it was a pretty surprising story that was the reason. Joining a West Point Thoroughbreds partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stakes action for a fraction of the cost. We're trying to do it on your own. Learn more at westpointtv.com. We'll be right back after this message from West Point Thoroughbreds. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With over 500 clients in the horse business, they have proven strategies to save you taxes. Learn more about how they can help you at greenco.com. So our guest of the week this week is a guy who made a lot of news in the past week with some of his comments at the Jockey Club Round Table, and then some regulatory actions in Maryland that we'll get into. It's the president of the Maryland Jockey Club, Sal Sinatra. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Sure. So I'm going to start with a more general question. We'll get into the details of the whole Wayne Potts thing. But one thing I want to know from a guy like you is what's the biggest obstacle to getting cheaters out of the game? Like people specifically, because I know the lack of uniformity is something that we talk about a lot. But it's incredibly frustrating as a relative outsider to see this obviously happening, seemingly have nobody in power doing anything about it, yourself excluded. And I know there are regulators like you who have the right, your heart's in the right place. You're trying to legitimately do the right thing. You must come up against obstacles. What are the biggest obstacles to getting cheating out of the game?
Biggest ones for me, if I can start back from Park's era, is Pennsylvania is a right-to-work state. So it was very difficult to ask someone to leave because they would go get a lawyer like Pincus, and you really didn't have a leg to stand on, especially when it came to the commission not acting on information you bring to them. And that brings me to what happened actually here is, when I see forged health certificates, when I have repeated claims for not, paying bills, when there's theft, when I'm watching horses race and return and running under other horses' names that everybody's aware of, action should have been taken before it gets to my desk. And unfortunately, since I've been in Maryland, this is the sixth person I've actually tossed. And I don't know why I seem to be the only one doing it. Now here, flip side, coming from the racing secretary side, a lot of guys, we got too many races. They're trying to fill entries. Most of these guys run their horses a lot. They help you when you call them. So they're kind of, I don't want to say racing off as favorites, but the gray area becomes not so gray when you need the horse to make 6 or 7 to fill the entries and close. So a lot of times, nobody wants to lose the horses, which is probably why Monmouth Park and Saratoga are accepting his entries. They're both struggling for entries. There really isn't a regulatory thing against them. It's just odd to me when the man can't run at Delaware, Parks, Penn National, Charlestown, and now Maryland, why the two biggest tracks in the Mid-Atlantic accept them is beyond me.
Yeah, Sal, it's John Green from DJ Stable. Again, thank you for coming on, and it's a very timely, topic for us to be talking to you about, because you have been standing up and ridding, the industry of some of these guys. We were literally just before you got on, we were having a hot conversation about what's going on in Remington Park and Lone Star.
Okay.
With one of the trainers there, and the question came up. Well, here's a trainer who didn't do anything recently against the rules as far as testing or anything like that. So does management and ownership of the racetracks have the right to just, not accept them at the track and remove them from the premises?
Well, in the case of what happened with Broberg, similar situation. I had a trainer write off-color comments and memes on his Facebook page.
Right.
Bad time to do it. We know what this world is like. Not you can take a side or anything. It's just that when you put on there you're a trainer at Maryland, or it appears that you work in the outside world, you're working for Laurel when you really aren't. You're outside. But we have to be able to. It's a different era, and I had talked to the horsemen in the past. It has become a real character issue, and when you say character, it's whether it's paperwork, whether it's 30% trainers that you're suspect on, whether it's guys that are on social media bashing you. We're all trying to make a living. We're trying to be proud. We're trying to clean our image as best as we can, and there's just no room for that. There really isn't. And if I have to run one less day or one less race because there's no horses, so be it. We have to make ourselves look better. We're trying with the breakdowns. We're trying with the medications. There's a character flaw. And when I see guys stabled down in Florida, or people running in Florida that we know the other person's stable down there and working, it's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. I was glad that Billy Badgett took some actions after I had done, but he's got some cleaning up to do down there.
Hey, Sal, it's Alan Carasso. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you.
At the end of the story from the Pollock report, Billy Badgett is quoted as saying we need to keep the integrity of the game, which is obviously something that every track official and president is obviously motivated by and concerned with. We also had a discussion a few minutes ago about jockeys' rides and different other things that could impact the integrity of the game. We spoke specifically about an incident at Monmouth Park last weekend where it really appeared that a jockey on a horse was doing some grandstanding and really overselling a foul. But how much oversight as track president do you have of policing that sort of behavior? And is there anything that can be done to tighten up or deter jockeys in the spirit of integrity and giving giving horses their best chance to win, et cetera? Is there anything from track management standpoint that can be done to tighten that?
Oh, absolutely. You can do the same as we do to a trainer. That particular jockey, the one at Monmouth this past weekend, if you recall, back in the day when he had his bug, I think Calder asked him to leave. He had so many infractions. He'd never been schooled, and that's a problem. I think even with trainers, if you don't smack them hard enough, they don't learn, and it just continues. And now with social media, it just brews, and it gives everybody a black eye. I think the coronavirus pandemic, at least for my own self, with extra time on my hands, you sit back and say, how can you make this better? I can't stop horses from breaking their legs. We can do things, but we all know it's going to happen. We know there's guys going to be having ridiculous percentages. But everybody in this room has been around long enough to know these numbers aren't real. They can't be. I did a lot of work with McKinsey folks through the Jockey Club. I see some anomalies, and with their numbers, it's apparent that we as racetracks, and unfortunately, Maryland parks, Charlestown, that have year-round backsides, it's tougher. But when you get a Remington that opens up or a Delaware, you just don't have to have them back. Go somewhere else. The problem is because commissions and there is no central office, somebody will always take the horse and trainer. There's people in the game right now that, I hate to say it, but they shouldn't even be around animals, let alone horses.
Sal, I want to stay on this subject. Somebody brought up earlier in the conversation Jeff Garral at the Meadowlands in harness racing, and he has far more than anybody in thoroughbred racing just taken all these guys, the supposed bad apples, said get lost. And one thing that he does that I don't think any American thoroughbred tracks have done is he'll look at a guy's record, and in harness racing, it's more times, So the guy will get a horse in his barns, never going faster than 153, and all of a sudden he goes 149. And he's basically just said, I don't need to have any proof. I know you're cheating. Get lost. Should thoroughbred racing do that? Should you take a trainer, maybe, what Navarro and Service were doing before they got caught? Say, look, this is so obvious. Or is that just something that's impractical?
It's difficult. It depends on the state. Again, without a central office and central rules, yeah, I could easily stop taking entries on a guy. I did it with Juan Vasquez. He has a license. I don't care for all his positives. I don't care for the way he acts. I don't want him running with me. You can do that with people. You can do it with riders. You see a guy riding aggressively, or you think drops somebody, or has done it repeatedly, he just shouldn't be up on top of a horse. I got to protect those guys, just like the horses and the bettors. I got to protect them all. I mean, you can. I mean, we in Maryland, it's not known. We have a little quasi-covert group together that we do a little more than most tracks do. For instance, the 2 Vitality horses that ran under Potts' name, both of them got special. Both of them we took care on. We do try and do a step above. I got the investigators walking the barns once a week, twice a week. Got the stewards walking the barns, trying to make a presence on the backside. The problem is, even with our guards, they don't even know what they're looking for. They don't know what a syringe is. They don't know what a shockwave machine looks like. And I think we finally got the RCI trying to put together a program to actually teach people what you're supposed to be looking for. And that's a big thing.
Yeah, so kind of to piggyback on that, I thought, the FBI indictment should have been a turning point for the industry to finally get its act together. And that pretty clearly, I think, didn't happen, with some exceptions. And I think part of the reason is because there are too many people who are too friendly with bad trainers. But I think part of the reason is also that a lot of these things are long-term fixes in terms of, getting a central governing body, systemic changes that I think are hard to implement. So what do you think? You mentioned surveillance. What do you think are some short-term, relatively easy fixes that we can do to clean up the game?
Well, short term is first of all, when these people are doing bad things or have 80 some odd rulings against them, I don't care if it's tripping or whatever, you need to penalize them. You need to penalize them hard. When these people get days, the practice of just transferring them to the assistant trainer and business as usual needs to go away. When you see one trainer loses his license for a long time and all his horses end up in somebody else's care, that's bizarre. Owners. We have owners, especially in the Mid-Atlantic, that gravitate to all the high percentage trainers. I know in other countries, once you transfer once, you have a hearing, you make sure all the bills are paid, you tell that owner, okay, you have to be with this man for another 12 months or 24 months before you can transfer again or get out of the game. We can't let these people bounce around. We have to be a little more strict. I think we need to watch races a little differently than we currently do. I'm learning a lot with this rating stuff on how other countries do things, and we are so lax. And that's probably the biggest problem. We have too much racing. We do not have enough horses. And there are people with horses, licenses, and stables in places that would have never gotten a stall 25 years ago. And that's a problem. Even riders, exercise boys, most of them are out there jumping from horse to horse, and they go get their jockey's license and become a jockey. As a matter of fact, maybe they shouldn't be on horses. You need good exercise boys in the morning. People that can tell you when the horse has an injury, not hustling $15 as fast as they can. A lot of things got broken down over time because we have too much racing. There's too many opportunities, and we're trying to fill all this stuff with no supply. And that's really the biggest problem. I mean, you can't expect, I'll take Monmouth Park because they haven't built new stalls, but they used to run 72 days. And a horse used to run 8 or 9 times a year. And if you do the math based on the stalls that they have, they were able to fill cards. Now you have the same amount of stalls that aren't filled as much. You're asking them to run more opportunities, and the individual horses run less per year. It's mathematically impossible to do what you're asking their meet to do. And we need to sit back and say, hey, guys, and I don't know why it is. When I was at Parks, we tried talking with Monmouth and making some sort of circuit. When I came here, we tried to do the same thing with Delaware. And there's just either mistrust between one or the two, or everybody thinks they need to be open all the time because it's so expensive to operate a backside. You got to have some money coming in, even though nobody handle covers any expenses. It's really, really a backwards thing. Most of the tracks now are propped up by slot machines. Tracks can afford, or companies can afford to lose $5 to $10 million on racing when they're printing money across the parking lot. And that's what they're doing. It's not good for our sport. So we need to clean it up. We need to get a better image. We need to bring back the owners that have been beaten out of the game, whether it was by cheats or claiming or, just financially doesn't make sense. We need to look at the whole model and reboot, or it's going to go away.
Sal, the good news is that the industry is primarily a copycat, business.
Yes.
So if you guys are leading the pack and eradicating, removing people from the industry that really don't belong in the long range, game, that's a positive thing. I think that's going to beget other actions from other racetracks. So even if we can't get to a centralized, governing body, at least by you guys setting the pace and doing it, showing the way, I think is hopefully going to have other racetracks, follow suit. Let's shift gears and talk about something positive that's going on in the industry right now, which is obviously Tissa Law and being going to be the favorite for the Derby, and then that leads it perfectly for you guys who set up the Preakness, as the fourth jewel in this year's Triple Crown. What can you give us an idea of how you guys strategically decided to run the race in October after the Derby and how that all kind of played out for us?
Well, the biggest first hurdle was trying to find out TV time with NBC, and obviously all sports were in disarray at that point. And the two basic dates that came back that were available were like 4th of July weekend and October. No one back then is we knew we wouldn't be able to have fans back in July. Part of my group wanted to run, MJC wanted to run without fans because we thought it was a way of, getting some money back we lost during COVID. The team corporate wanted to run in October, hoping to get fans there. Because obviously that's the Preakness, it's the Enfield Fest. That's its moniker. So we wound up going with the October date and being third, always hopeful of Triple Crown, not knowing what this year was going to hold. Fortunately, watching the way Barkley's horse is running right now, I'm pretty optimistic he may get there. And so, at least to be trying for Triple Crown. The other thing that helps us in October is we're a month now after Churchill's races, which should help strengthen the undercard. The only problem is that I saw New York and Churchill actually put more races up that weekend, which was kind of disappointed. But again, back when they did it, their horsemen would have to be quarantined for 14 days. So they're trying to protect their guys and give them a spot to run.
Right.
Fortunately, yesterday, Como lifted Maryland, so that kind of helps us a little bit.
And were you guys in communication with Churchill Downs and with Naira with regard to try to come up with dates, or?
No, Churchill did it on his own. We definitely were talking with Naira. I know it's certainly Martin and I had several conversations. Right. Just trying to figure it out, and then trying to work Travers and Belmont into the Triple Crown, and because once you pick Labor Day, that screwed up Travers, and there were some people with hair up and stuff like that. But you really want to do what's going to be best for the animals to get them to that point, ultimately the Breeders' Cup. So I'm happy with the October date.
Sal, if I can jump in, I want to change the subject for a minute. Another thing that's been a controversial part of racing is this GMAX timing system that the Jockey Club put in. And you smile there. So the history at Laurel, I'll save you from having to tell your story. You put it in. There were some problems apparently with the times. You took it out for a while, went back to the teletimers, and now you're back to GMAX. Could you just talk about your experiences and have this caused some headaches for Laurel that maybe the teletimer wouldn't have?
Yeah, it definitely has caused headaches. The interesting variable is my connection with Jockey Club and Encompass. I try and be a guinea pig and I try and help them out. And what happens is, I will take the computer reads when they tell me, oh, it's working, and I'm actually paying a guy to hand time every race at the track while this is going on. My whole thing was to get the chicklets for our big turf, fields. Time, and the problem is when I go to talk to Jim Gagliano and I mentioned to Tim, then he screams and hollers at everybody. But from other projects I was working on personally, I don't think a GPS is exact enough. From what I talked to NSA, because we're local, and they're telling me that GPS is only accurate to within a meter. Well, left or right, that's over a length. I mean, you have to be exact with time. And a beam is really the logical thing. I think ultimately, and that's what I talked to Jim the other day, they bought American Teletimer. The beams will be incorporated into their system so that maybe the lengths will be a little off, or I'm not sure, but at least the time's going to get accurate. But it is frustrating, and I don't think what they don't realize, and when I say they, it's probably the technical guys in Lexington, is that those times affect not only the numbers, but now my track superintendent thinks his track's souped up. The trainers think the track's too fast. And you start this finger pointing thing that shouldn't even have happened at the track. And I can't keep going back and saying, well, it's the timing system. Because it sounds like I'm BSing the guys. So every time I see, a never win 2 for a quarter going 8 and change or something, I get a phone call from my track superintendent. I get a text from the Horsemen's group, and it's like, okay, here we go again. It's almost to the point now, if they don't change it soon, then I'm just going to have to not put times up until after the race and use my hand timer. And that's what the guys are doing. Fortunately, a lot of guys on social media do let me know when they see stuff, and I do appreciate it. And I try and get it corrected, but it's very frustrating when you see that number go up there and the track is not that fast.
Sal, the Stronach Group and Marin Jockey Club have been pursuing Breeders' Cup bid for several years. Is that something that the MJC and the Stronach Group is still pursuing? And if so, is there any particular time frame in mind?
We're always going to be pursuing it. Obviously, that the bill got passed last session for the Racing for the Future, where there's going to be a new Pimlico, there's going to be a new Laurel, there's going to be all new barns at Laurel, and that's probably looking at close to a 5-year plan. I don't think in any short term that either facility will be able to handle it. Right now there's designing the barns and the new track. We're going to probably put synthetic, a third surface in at Laurel. Possibly only have 2 in a training track. We're going back and forth on that. But all the horses will be housed at Laurel. Pimlico will just be there for a showcase for Pimlico with no horses on the grounds. And the city's going to all use that. I think the plan now would be is if Breeders' Cup did come, the logical place would probably be the one at Pimlico just because of the history of the spot.
So before we let you go, I had a question. I thought we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this. You talked about eliminating the claiming game at the Jockey Club Round Table, which I think is a relatively revolutionary idea in American racing. And it's something that other people have hinted at. Pat Cummings has talked about it on our show. I think I agree with that as an end goal, but it's something that would have to happen in phases and over time and would have some negative consequences. So what do you think that transition would realistically look like if the sport were ever to move in that direction to get rid of claiming races?
Well, I think, and I have other ideas, but what I'm trying to do is I look at our problems as we don't have enough horse selection owners in the game, and we're putting out a piss poor product for the gamblers. So how do I fix those things? Well, one, we have too many categories for horses to enter into. I think a ratings reduces that, or at least there's this fixation with claiming because the prices are not relative to the value of the horse, that people do not enter their horse unless it's the perfect spot, because when they're going to be picked to win, they're probably going to get claimed. So they're looking at losing. It's one of the few things you got to put all in to gamble to win a purse, and you're going to lose your animal. So I think what we need to do is come up with ratings on these horses, possibly replace, let's just say, and this is hypothetically, replace starter allowance races with these ratings races. They could have an optional where if you don't fit the range, I was talking yesterday with the guys I'm trying to develop the formula is, if it's for 80 or less, say, rating horses, and your horse is an 85, maybe you can enter in that race for a claiming price. You carry the top weight because you have the highest rating for your horses for sale. And it may be a way of combining claiming and letting people who don't want to lose their horse run their horse against like horses. The other thing we've done, especially with claiming races, is you get non-2, non-3, non-4. 1 win in 6 months, 2 wins in 6 months. And I think people are waiting for races that they could run in other races and be competitive. So if you put them in a rating of an 80, maybe the horse that only has 3 wins run against a horse with 9 wins actually run equivalent. And if you can get a couple of people to realize they don't have to run their non-2 and a non-2 and a non-3 and a non-3, I think if you shrink the amount of options, field size will go up. If we can get the rating close, the competitive nature of the race, the wagering dollar, you'll see in the odds. And I think horses will run more often if a guy's not going to lose his horse. I just think it's too logical to me that we've created this arena, and especially with the slots, we never valued the horse up. I mean, when I worked at Monmouth in the mid-'80s, the last race was always a Jersey bred nickel. And today, the bottom is a Jersey bred nickel. We're talking 35 years later. That horse has to be worth a little more than that. But we keep it low so people can get in the game, and then the poor horse gets chewed up.
Yeah.
So it's a bad arena we've created, and we have to fix it.
For sure.
Sal, we appreciate the fact that you guys are constantly throwing out new ideas, because that's one of the things about this industry is, we need to have a think tank where we're working together to come up with solutions rather than just kind of throwing out and doing reactionary planning. So I remember when you were at Parks and you had I think you were teaching a class at Drexel, or you had a group of students from Drexel that came out, and they were hooting and hollering and having a great time. And that was 25 young people who were trying to come into the game and learn more about the game. And we just need more ideas like that. So, again, as somebody who's involved in the industry on different platforms, I applaud you guys for coming up with different ideas. And I know I speak for a lot of other people who say, keep coming, and we'd love to be involved in the thought process of some of these as well.
Well, terrific. Well, thanks for having me, and if we come up with anything else, I'll be glad to be back.
Absolutely. And, I just going off of what John said, I appreciate you, being hard asses on these guys that are trying to cheat, and talking about it openly and candidly. There aren't too many guys who talk like you about what's going on in this game. So we appreciate that as well.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Sal. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Sal.
you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Best of luck. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Sal Sinatra will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. Learn more about how they can help you at greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message from The Green Group.
The Green Group is widely recognized as the top-rated tax and accounting firm specializing in the horse business. Why do the top owners, breeders, pinhookers, and trainers trust the Green Group as their tax advisors? The difference is experience. Firm founder Len Green has over 4 decades of experience owning, breeding, and racing horses. First-hand knowledge gives Green Group clients proven tax and money-saving strategies. Visit the Green Group at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
So this was something I wanted to mention, kind of in the vein of what Sal Sinatra is talking about when people, and what other people are talking about when they want to get rid of the claiming game. It was a horse who ran on Saturday at Saratoga in the second race, named Air Touch. And he was owned by Cheyenne Stables, trained by Todd Fletcher. This is a horse who had run 4 times before. He had run 86, a 92, a 79, and a 90 buyer. Last time he was seen was in November of 2019 at Aqueduct. He ran a 90 buyer. He was second, beaten a half length by Network Effect, who, if you remember, was runner-up in the Met Mile not too long ago. Just for comparison, the buyer par for this race was 77. I think even that's a little high. It's probably like in the upper 60s or low 70s. Was in for a $25,000 tag, non-2, on Saturday. And this was a horse that the entire world knew these people were trying to get rid of. And this is the kind of thing that happens pretty much every day in racing. It doesn't happen as often on the bigger, more classy circuits like Saratoga, but it happens where people have horses who on paper are clearly worth a lot more money than what they're selling them for in these claiming races. And that rubs me the wrong way in general. But then what happened in the race really rubs me the wrong way, because if you watch the race, he ran a complete, a non-factor third, and he didn't change leads in the stretch. And he ran, to my eyes, like a hurt horse. And after the race, lo and behold, there were a couple claims on him, which that's another interesting thing, is that the horse who won the race, who was on paper not nearly as good as Air Touch, had like 7 or 8 claims, and Air Touch had like 3 or 4. So somebody beyond everybody who was watching knew that this horse was not worth claiming. Nevertheless, he did get a couple of claims in on him. It was like a 3-way shake or something, and then the claim was voided. So that tells me that the horse, A, was clearly gotten rid of, B, ran like a hurt horse, and then C, had his claim voided. All put that all together is he was allowed to run as an injured animal. And I don't have the vet records. I can't prove that for a fact, but all signs point to that. And while I agree with what John said earlier about voiding claims, I think that overall is a good rule. My question is, how does this horse pass the vet check in the morning and then have the claim voided in the afternoon? That to me is the big problem. And the fact that this horse was allowed to ran like he did, and then had a voided claim, I think that's a major, major problem, a major black eye to everybody who allowed that to happen. And like I said, it happens all the time. It doesn't just happen, it doesn't just happen at smaller tracks. It happens at bigger tracks. And I feel bad. I feel bad for the horse in question. And, it has to stop. And I wonder about the discrepancy between the horse being allowed to run by the vet in the first place and then having the voided claim. So I just wanted to get that off my chest, because it makes me sick, honestly, to see that horse in the PPs and then to see how the horse ran and then to see the voided claim, because all signs point to we're running hurt horses in front of millions of people, and not to mention the bettors. Like I went and did the math. $237,486 was bet on him just in the win, place, and show pools. Never mind all the exotics bets that used him. It's I don't know. That seems kind of like stealing to me, and it's a bad look for everybody involved, and we gotta cut this out. Just want to get that off my chest before we sign off, because this is the kind of stuff we're trying to clean out of the game.
Yeah, Joe, I just to piggyback on it for a second, I think that the process, as far as the claiming, void and everything like that worked. But you hit the nail on the head. The person, the veterinarian who was supposed to be looking at the horse in the morning, didn't do a good job. And you could say, well, maybe the horse got hurt in the race. I don't know. It looked to me like the horse was protecting itself, and didn't really, try to stride out or reach out. That's just a layperson's, view on it. I had no skin in the game at all. But the fact that the claim did get voided, I think, is a positive thing, because now, if Cheyenne Stable, who owned the horse in the first place, they may come back next time and say, it's not worth it for the next horse that we do this to. Let's just go ahead and repurpose the horse or donate it or do something else with it to get it out of racing, or fix the problem if it's fixable. I mean, if the horse is out since November, it had enough time. It sounds like whatever the issue was isn't going to get fixed with time. So repurpose it, do something different with it at that point. Not to get into a tax, make this a business situation, but if at that point they had donated the horse before they entered him for the $25,000, they would have had a much higher deduction, on the books, and done the right thing for the horse. And now the value is now at $25,000. So whatever they do with the horse, if they donate it, they get a $25,000 donation versus I think they bought the horse for $600 and something thousand. So, they may have gotten a much higher, deduction for doing the right thing by the horse. So I think the process is there, and that looks like it's working-ish, but it needs to be fine-tuned and needs to be worked on a little bit more. And there are opportunities where you would say, okay, a racing program is taking advantage of a long layoff, and they're trying to steal one. And we actually did that with Blue Buff, which is why we were able to run him for 12.5 after a 2.5-year layoff and not running well on the turf. But I would say the majority of horses that are doing that kind of a plummet are doing it because the owner and the trainers want to get the horse out of their stable and off the books. And it's not the right thing to do by the athlete.
Right. And these horses just have a blinking red sign that says, I'm being gotten rid of. And then when they run like he did, it's just, it makes me sick. It makes me embarrassed to be a racing fan and a gambler as well. So just wanted to get that off my chest. It's just an example of stuff we got to change. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the TDN Writers Room, episode 51. Well on our way to 100. I want to thank Bill Finley, John Green, Alan Carasso, our Green Group guest of the week, Sal Sinatra, our producer, Patty Wolf, our editors, Anthony LaRocca and Danny Seiper, and our production coordinator, Michelle Sabrino. Thanks for watching. Wear a mask. See you next week. Derby week on the TDN Writers Room.